Thank you once again for joining us on the Rashi Nosh. I'm Pastor Matt.
And I'm Kara.
This week we are in Parashat Mishpatim. And here we are once again in our JPS Rashi Torah discussion commentary. And we're going to look at something for this week's Torah portion at a heading called Charity Begins at Home. It says here, the Jewish community has a long history of providing for the poor. The origins of this practice can be traced back to this week's Parasha. Now, just as an aside, I don't know if you know this, but you learn in year Aleph in our yeshiva, in the kosher pastor courses, that if you are going to start a Jewish community, even though before you have a synagogue, or a school, you set up a charity fund. That's what you've got to do first, because we're supposed to help one another. We're supposed to help those less fortunate than us. So it says there in Exodus 22:24, if you lend money to my people, to the poor among you, do not act toward them as a creditor. Exact no interest from them. Rashi explains that the important principles concerning priorities in charitable giving are derived from the beginning of this verse. To my people. Here's what Rashi says about that phrase, to my people. If you are faced with a choice of lending money to one of my people, i.e. a Jew, or a Gentile, then my people has a priority. If the choice is between a poor person and a rich person, the poor person has a priority. If the choice is between the poor of your city and among you and the poor of another city, meaning the poor of some other place, then the poor of your city has priority. So this is, of course, just logical, scripturally speaking. This obviously is speaking from a Jewish context. So if you are Jewish and you have an opportunity to help a Jew or a Gentile, you help a Jew first. Just like I would say, if you're a member of a church, if you have an opportunity to help someone in your church or someone outside your church, help the person in your congregation first. They should have priority. They're among your family, your church family, your community. That's something that we have no problem saying with our church. In fact, my mother, when I was a child, would cleverly ask someone when they would come and ask for money. Frequently, people would come to our home, to our door, and knock on the door and ask for cash, for money. And she would say, well, where do you go to church? Knowing that probably this person didn't go to church, because her next sentence was, because I have to tell you, in our church family, we take care of one another. And maybe if you were a part of a church, maybe you wouldn't have this particular need. It's an interesting point. So Rashi advises that foremost, we are to prioritize helping people of limited means rather than those of means. But we may have to choose among many people of inadequate means that we need to help. So you may say, okay, here's someone who already has a bit of money and here's someone who has nothing. Obviously, we would choose the person to help first that has no money. But what if there are several people that have no money? How do you prioritize? So there are some questions that arise here in our discussion section that says, what charities do you support and why? How do you decide how to allocate your giving among the various charitable requests that you receive? And how do you, or how might you, assist organizations or people that need non-monetary things? How do you help in need in non-monetary ways? So as far as charities that I support, I typically like to support charitable organizations that have to do with people that I know personally. And one of those things is, it's not that I'm trying to show favoritism to charities that have to do with a friend of mine or maybe like Rabbi Shapira. I might help Operation Or Goyim or Operation Israel or Operation Africa or something like that. Why do I am I giving preferential treatment because I know someone? I would say it like this. It's not that I'm giving preferential treatment, but I'm on the board of Ahavat Ami Ministries, and I know where the money goes. Sometimes, unfortunately, in the modern world, there's a lot of overhead in a charity. They have to pay for office space and then office staff. And sometimes the money that you give, I hate to say it, but I know of one charitable organization that's very well known. It's not a religious organization, but a very well known charitable organization worldwide. And a while back, a report came out that only 20 cents on the dollar, only 20% of the money that you give actually goes to the people that they're supposed to help, because there's a lot of overhead. There's a lot of people that work for the organization. They have a marketing team to get the word out. They have people on staff. They have all these different expenses, so that if I give $1, only 20% is going to what I'm really giving for. So I tend to like to give to charities that have little or no overhead, or to support things that I believe in that don't have that type of expense burden, if that makes sense. I would rather as much of that money go to the actual people as possible. And so that's how I would answer that one. How do you decide how to allocate your giving among the various charitable requests you receive? I'm going to answer that one like this. I get phone calls. Maybe I could say every day.
Practically.
At least practically every day, I get phone calls requesting financial help of some kind. Now, as just being as transparent as possible and laying everything out on the table here, as a general rule, we at our church, we don't give out money. We have a food pantry, and so we give out food. Mostly because there's really no guarantee, if you give money to someone, that they're going to spend it on the need that they're mentioning to you. And so we typically are, and we're not a very big church, and we don't have a lot of money. And so we typically like to help people in other ways. So because we have that policy, there have been times where from time to time, I personally will help someone out of my own pocket, out of my own bank account, where I will buy someone groceries. I typically don't give money to people. I typically will buy them food. And I've done that dozens of times. But what I like to say, my stipulation is, I like to say I can help everyone once. Because unfortunately, in our society, if you're not careful, a person will just keep coming back and coming back. And it's more of me being used in a way that I don't think is the best stewardship, or the best way that honors the Lord in that way. And so what I will do is to say, I can buy you some groceries, and I can help you one time. And I have an app on my phone that is a grocery delivery place. Because again, I hate to say it, but in the modern world, you also have to be concerned about your safety. And there could be someone that has nefarious, plans in mind. And if I'm walking up to their home and they're a complete stranger to me, how do I know that they're not going to try to attack me and rob me or something like that? So sometimes what I'll do is I'll have a grocery delivery service. I'll say, give me your address and I'll send some groceries to you. And if you were to open my app, I have so many addresses, and it's because I help people one time. And I think if you have a blanket rule like that, that way you are doing your part and you're helping, but you're not being used, and you're not also enabling someone who might need to make better choices with their money, if that makes sense.
I think for me sometimes too, it's I really do feel like there's times where the Spirit just kind of guides you to be like, this person is genuinely needs your help. I'm the same way. We have numerous people that'll just come up to the church doors anytime that I'm there asking for money, and again, most of the time the answer is, we don't give money, oh, we just need gas. Well, then I'll come over there and put gas in your car, but I'm not going to just give you money because, and so, but every once in a while I'll feel just a little bit whatever. And for some reason I feel like I should give this person, this little amount that I just happen to have this in my pocket, and you're welcome to it, So I think sometimes, being smart about it, but also sometimes being open to, the Spirit kind of leading you into certain, because every once in a while when you do that, you can tell, because the person who's receiving that, I mean, they are emotionally touched by your generosity, and not just thank you out the door. You know what I mean? And so I think that's also something sometimes to take into consideration as well.
I love that. There are also other ways that you can help people. You may have a little extra food and maybe some canned goods in your home, in your pantry, in your kitchen that you could give to someone. Maybe you had an unexpected blessing where you received a little extra money, or maybe a gift card to somewhere, or a little extra something that you weren't expecting. You didn't have it before, so you're no worse off if you give it away. And so that, I think, is an easy way to start being generous with people.
Yeah, and I know sometimes in our house we're really conscious of, if we get something new, and instead of just taking the old thing and throwing it out, seeing if there is somebody in our world that we could use benefit from that. Our family's always been really good about doing hand-me-downs, and to people in the
Yeah.
church, if there's anything that we have that we can share, um, you know, not money necessarily, but just and even some things, just babysitting for a single mom, you know what I
Sure.
mean, that needs a night to be able to do something, or different things like that. There's a lot of ways to support and be generous that are not necessarily with cash.
I was always proud of our kids when it got to be around holiday time and we knew and they knew that they were going to be getting some new toys, that our kids would sometimes, get a bag and put some of their toys in there to give to someone else because they knew they'd be getting new toys, either for the holidays or a birthday or something like that. And I think that's a good habit to get into. We don't need all the toys. We don't have to have all of the world's toys at once, or clothes. Sometimes it's a good thing if you get some new clothes to donate some of the clothes that you won't be using anymore. That's a non-monetary way that you could give to someone charitably. And I think that's good. And at least for people like us, neither of us grew up in families that had a lot of money. And so we both grew up with a lot of hand-me-down clothes or thrift store clothes or things like that. And it's always interesting. It always blesses someone if you donate that clothes, even if you just donate those clothes to a store, a resale store, or a thrift store. Someone is going to be very blessed by that. And it's going to be continuing that charitable attitude. And I think it's good for the soul to do that, to give charitably. Of course, this is an organization, Ahavat Ami International and Yeshivat Shuvu, that can always use your financial donations. And I guarantee you, because I know from experience, no one is getting wealthy doing these things. I'm always amazed that Rabbi Shapiro will do things like give hundreds and hundreds of scholarships to our seminary, our yeshiva, for people in a country that isn't very wealthy, and where that, someone who's a business minded person could say, well, you could be making X amount of dollars for your ministry if you just charged, but we would rather people learn than not be able to go to the school because they don't have the money. And so that's why we will have people in wealthier countries like the United States pay for their tuition so that we can give scholarships to people in Africa or people in other parts of the world. And it's another non-monetary way, in a way that you can do something. You don't just have to give money to someone. You can also render services. If you own a business and you wanted to cut someone's lawn for free just to be nice to a person who couldn't afford it, or to tutor someone in a subject at school or something like that, or to give a music lesson for free to someone. There are different things that you can do in a non-monetary way that are still very charitable, and a way that you can give. And I think giving is not only good for the recipient, it's good for the one who is giving. Mm-hmm. So go out there and give. Think of creative ways for you to give charitably, and ways that you can be wise about it. Continue to pray for us in our travels, and we will be back at the end of February. And it's always good to be with you here on the Rashi Nosh, and we're hoping to see you in person someday. God bless you, and shalom.